Hello, PSI2000 students. I'm glad we're finally done our midterm exam and we're starting back into the substantive work of week 8, which is about parliamentary bodies. What I want you to do is in this week is make sure you understand the roles of the various entities of the machinery of government, which includes the executive branch, of course, comprised of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, the legislative branch, comprised of the Senate and the House of Commons, and the judicial branches, the courts, and especially the Supreme Court. This, in its entirety, is typically called in political science the machinery of government. And we need to understand how those various organizations within our government work, how legislation is established. So you will see in my notes for the week that I also talk about the typical process that legislation or acts of Parliament go through. One of the common themes, or the predominant themes that will run through your readings for this week, will be the relative strengthening of the executive branch vis-a-vis the declining significance of the House of Commons in particular, but Parliament generally, which would also include the Senate. We have all seen recently the difficulties that the Senate has gone through, but perhaps more significant from our elected institutions' point of view is the relative decline of the power and influence of the House of Commons and parliamentary committees vis-a-vis the executive branch comprised of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. We saw that sort of strengthening of the executive branch begin to occur under Prime Minister Chrétien, but it was magnified even further under the relative control strategies of the Harper Conservatives. And I think that problem continues to be with us today. And we have to ask ourselves to what extent that this becomes a challenge to the legitimacy, and you remember that term, public legitimacy, of our democratic institutions if we continue to see strengthening of the influence and power of the executive branch vis-a-vis the parliamentary branch of the machinery of government. And at the same time that that's been going on, you learned from the discussion of the Constitution that the courts have also seen an increased role in the interpretation of the Constitution 1982, and in particular the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And so also on that angle, parliamentary bodies, in particular the House of Commons, are being challenged from another power center. So at the one hand, the executive branch has become more powerful, and on the other hand, the Supreme Court and the judicial branch has become more powerful. And the House of Commons is basically at a point now where people are beginning to think seriously about how do we re-strengthen the role of Parliament, how do we improve the strength and influence of parliamentary committees, how do we improve the influence and participation of individual members of Parliament that are elected by our constituencies. And these issues are always evolving, right? There's never one sort of standard approach. Things change over time, but the concerning part is that there's been a relatively long-standing trend now of the increasing power of the executive vis-a-vis Parliament, and within the 1982 Constitution, the increasing say of the Supreme Court in particular vis-a-vis Parliament. So we're constantly dealing with these types of issues. One approach that is being advanced, including by the recently elected Liberal government, is to improve the electoral legitimacy of members of Parliament by going to a proportional representation system instead of a first-past-the-post system, which we will learn about later in the course. But there's also efforts being taken to improve the influence of parliamentary committees. And, of course, the Senate is proving to be an especially intractable problem in this day and age when appointed bodies simply lack public legitimacy. And you remember those terms about legitimacy and influence, and you can see that the Senate could be used as a case study for looking at that. I mean, what happens to a government institution when its powers, or the continued exercising of its powers, begins to lose its public legitimacy? And you can see that in a small way, fortunately there's no conflicts in the streets, but in a small way, the Senate is a good case study for that. So make sure that during the week's readings you understand the various elements of the machinery of government, what their roles and responsibilities are, and how we have a challenge with respect to the role of Parliament vis-a-vis the executive and the judiciary. So on that score, I'll leave you and enjoy the week's readings, recover from your midterm exam, and we'll be back for week 9. Take care. Have a good week. Bye.